next question that I'm asking you is, what are the 3 most important things to think about when you first start growing? And this can be if you're doing it in a balcony, in a small container, or in the ground. So what are 3? So we'll start with, who did I say? I think I said Melody. I have a short, bad memory.
It's kind of hard to pick 3 things, but I think one thing would be kind of go where your interests lie. Like, I feel like both Kevin and Charles are talking about the importance of cooking and food in their life, and so yeah, if that's maybe a part of your life as well, what are the vegetables that you love to cook with, or herbs? If you love tea, or maybe you love flowers and you want to grow flowers. For me, I'm really interested in, I'm really worried about the state of our world in terms of environmental crisis. And so my interest kind of goes towards how can I help the natural habitat. And so maybe that's an interest of yours, and you want to research how to support bees and butterflies in whatever space that you have to grow. So yeah, I think that helps when you can kind of grow out of what you love in other areas of your life and integrate that. Another important thing would be just to spend some time with that, whatever space you have available to grow. Spend some time observing, paying attention to how much light it gets. That's a big factor in terms of what might grow well there. So if you've got a shady spot, you might not be able to grow certain kinds of vegetables that really need the heat and the sun. But you can tailor, to what conditions you have to do get the best out of that area. I think the other piece, we've kind of all touched on this a little bit, just the importance of community, like finding people who also are interested, maybe people at different points in their experience. So you've got others that are just starting out, and maybe somebody who's got more experience, and just having that those connections to draw on when you're trying to troubleshoot something, you don't know what's going on. You can ask somebody, they might have ideas how to deal with insect or disease that's happening to your plant. And then just to share the journey, right? Like, when there's highs and lows with gardening, like when all your cucumbers die very quickly in a short period of time, it's tragic, and you need somebody to just understand how that feels. So yeah, just building that community around you. It might just be a neighbor, or maybe a family friend who's been growing for a while. Finding those people to join you.
Thank you very much, Melody. And Kevin, same question. So the 3 most important things when you want to start growing.
Yeah, I think Melody touched on that, where like to really get started on urban agriculture, I think that first you have to realize like it's a lot of commitment a little bit, and also it's all about like your interests, like what you want to do. Like for me, it was like, cooking and food as well. So I was really passionate and have a large of interest in that, like learning how to grow food. So I think that's really important to have, because I feel like people that just grow food, they may just not spend as much time, and it could just like not be efficient, or but for me, I think that time is really important, I would say, because of the dedication, and it takes a while to grow food, and you really have to be careful, and with all the weather, and with just a lot of maintenance goes into gardening. So I think that you will have to take some time to like actually garden, and just not leave it all to weeds, because I feel like it does happen from experience where the middle of the season you just start to burn out a little bit, and your garden just starts to like have a lot of weed. And that's another thing, like having strength. I feel like from my personal experience, like burning out was kind of a big thing for me, and it was something that I had to just like work on that and, try to push it so that I don't really burn my crop or my crops doesn't fail. So I think having strength is really important. And so it's like strength, time, and really dedication is like the advice or something that you have to look forward to when you're going into gardening, because I think that's important, really. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kevin. And I think I said Lara. Same
Yeah,
question.
I really relate to those things that are said. The community part, I would say choosing what you grow based on your growing conditions. So I really love container gardening. As many of you know, I've done 2 books on growing food in containers. So especially for containers, watermelon might be your favorite food. You can grow a watermelon in a really large container, but it's like not the best place to start. So kind of that filter around what are my growing conditions going to really support. So again, that's really super important for balconies and containers and small spaces. Pumpkin, again, pumpkin patch, you might not have space for a pumpkin patch or like the soil to support that. So there's tons of beautiful food you can grow in a container, and maybe starting small is good. The second one I would say, so listen to your plants. People say talk to your plants. That's great too, but when you're talking to them, you kind of have to listen to them too. Observing, like Melody said, again, like observing, listening. They're going to tell you once you grow plants for a bit, you can say, oh, is that too wet or too dry? And you kind of know just by seeing it, even like seeing it across the balcony. And then 3, I would say just keep trying. Don't give up. Totally had that happen to my cucumbers before. And I grew cucumbers again and they were better. And it can be like very disheartening, and you think, oh, I killed my plant, I'm a black thumb, I'm not a green thumb or something, but your plants can do better next time. And like, you're always get every mistake that happens to your plants, you're going to learn something. So keep trying.
Thank you very much, Lara. And Charles, same question to you. Charles, you're still muted.
Sorry, I'm not off to a good start today. So the first thing for me was what was culturally appropriate. What again is an indigenous plant and food sources. So, for example, I was doing the 3 sisters vegetables, beans, corn, and squash, and growing them in one of the traditional ways of growing them on mounds. So it was its own little ecosystem. Second, again, what was local to this area specifically, the Toronto area, and trying to find varieties of beans and squash and corns that were from here. I did other ones as well, but I wanted to try and replicate what might have been grown in this area. This year I do have some more winter squashes varieties of winter squash that I'll be growing at Gittagonis. And my third reason for picking what I was growing was selfish. What I like to eat, what I like to cook with, and what I like to, so, you got to enjoy what you're growing as well. So that would be my 3 points.
Thank you so much. I always lead with that. What do I want to eat? So for the next question, it actually ties into the question I just asked. This time we'll go from Lara to Charles to Melody to Kevin. So this one is, what are 3 practical pieces of advice that you would give to any random person who's thinking about growing? So very practical tips that a person needs to know when they are starting. So,
okay. Yeah, I think I was thinking about those practical tips on my last answer. So what can I add to that? yeah, just don't be afraid to start. I think I've worked with a lot of beginner first-time gardeners who they're just timid. They're afraid of doing something wrong. They've maybe had that bad experience where something died, and just going ahead anyway, and knowing that the plants are super resilient. The plants, again, they'll talk to you, they'll teach you, they'll tell you what they need, and when they're unhappy, and it might take you a bit of time, might take you a few seasons or many seasons to learn that, but just don't be afraid to start. I would say the second one is that, yeah, I guess it's a bit repetitive, but when something goes wrong with your garden, you always can learn something from that. So it's not like a failure. Like Marvin used to say at Access Alliance, fail is first attempt in learning. So, you know, next year, if you did something wrong, and like, I've been doing this how many years, 15, 18 years or something, I still make a really obvious mistake. Like I'll forget to, I don't know, I'll say, oh, I can still seed these plants. It's not too late. And then they'll be too small, or just, you're like constantly learning. So approaching it as that constant learning is really great. And I think take care of the soil. Goes for containers, small space, any space, big space. Soil is alive. If you didn't think of soil or pay attention to soil as being this very beautifully complex living being and organism, pay attention to that, because if you're trying to grow food, you need healthy soil. You need compost, you need microbes. If you have never heard of microbes, check out soil microbes. You know, that's like a huge field of science, but for urban gardeners, if we put some compost in our soil, that's kind of the most straightforward way of making sure we have life in the soil. And it's like even more important in containers when we're kind of cut off from the land. So yeah, soil, that'd be my last one.
Thank you very much, Laura. And the next one, same question to you, Charles.
So 3 practical tips from me, I would think would be water properly, which is, I think Laura started to touch on her last question. When I was doing my research last year, being that I was considering, when I was first considering, was I going to take this? Could I actually do it? I talked to some of the farmers that I've purchased with directly from, and that was one of the first key points that was taught to me. You know, lots of people have home sprinkler systems that go across, you know, and spread the water everywhere, where he said water direct at the base of your plant. He said when you're thirsty, you take a drink out of a cup and goes where the water is supposed to go. You don't take a shower. So water direct to the roots, you save water, you don't need as much, and more importantly, invest in that 10-meter water beater. Again, because a lot of people overwater, and the top inch or two, once your plant's established, the top inch or two of the ground might be hard and dry, but if you stick that down to where the roots actually are, 4 or 5 inches into the ground, it could be super moist, and there's plenty of liquids or moisture still in the ground that your plants are just doing fine. So don't overwater. And I'm still learning about the same tip that Laura just talked about, was know your soil, know what soil grows, what your plants grow best in. And yeah, there you go.
Okay, so Charles, I just joined you in the in the not knowing to unmute yourself. So we'll go to Melody next. Same question.
Yeah, just to kind of continue on what Charles was saying about watering. One thing you can also do for, you know, in ground gardens is water a long drink of water for your plants, rather than, you know, every day going out and giving them water, but that maybe once a week, kind of giving it a good long drink, and that will help the plants to kind of actually reach down further in the soil and be more resilient than if you're kind of babying them every day. And that might help for, if we get a period of drought in the summer, they'll just be more resilient to survive that. Yeah, what Laura was talking about compost, I think that's a pretty good area to focus on if it's possible for you to kind of build in a composting system somehow with your gardening. And it's going back to the soil and what does the soil need. You're kind of taking care of these plants, but you're also having to then be a caretaker of the soil. That's where all the nutrients and everything the plant needs is there. So as much as we can learn how to, reuse our kitchen scraps and put that back into our gardening, then that's I think a really good way to move forward. And I would say also mulching in the fall would be a good one for people who have access, to a garden bed. At the common table this last fall, I roped all my seasonal workers to drive around with me in the neighborhood in the fall when all the other, houses were raking up their leaves and bagging them. It's like perfect for us. We just ran around like sold bags of leaves and spread them out on our beds. So that provides, cover. You don't really want any soil to be left bare. So you're just kind of mimicking nature, what happens, the trees are providing all this nutrients to the ground. So just try and copy that. And it's keeping it warm and sort of insulated. The worms enjoy that. So they're going to be kind of going to those nice covered beds to do their work in the winter time. And then that'll decompose and add organic matter for the next season. So I would suggest mulching as well.
Thank you very much, Melody. Same question to you, Kevin.
Yeah, I think start small. Don't overwhelm yourself with what you want to grow. Just grow just one variety or just grow one crop. If you're just going to grow one plant of tomato, do it. I've always talked to my friends about they always want to grow a lot of stuff, but I'm like, if this is your first time, maybe kind of just slow down a little bit and not overwhelm and not just grow a bunch of vegetables. Just start with herbs or something that's easy to maintain, because I feel like a lot of people would just jump to the start, oh, I'm just going to grow cucumbers or watermelon or squash, and then they'll realize it will be harder for them to they'll make a lot of mistakes, but it's fine. But it's also, if you grow herbs, you will understand how it's growing and how much water it needs and how much time it takes to grow one plant, rather than squash, which squash takes 3 months, right? So maybe if they're growing squash for the first time, they'll be like, oh, 2 months in, nothing's happening. But realistically, something's happening, but it's just the patient and all that. So I think that's one advice that's really good for me. And I've been always talking to people or telling people about that. And another advice would be just reading books. With Laura's book, I have her book, which is amazing, all the illustration and all that. It's really practical. It's really easy to really, that. Yeah, those two books, those are really easy step-to-step tutorials. And, it's kind of a database of which herbs works well in each container. So I would say learn your space as well. Learn where you're growing first, see how much you can fit in your container or your backyard or whatever, just so it's not overwhelming. I think, yeah, the word overwhelming is it's a lot in urban agriculture, because urban agriculture is limited to space. I don't think a lot of urban farms have big scale farming. It's mainly small scale, mainly 2 acres. So I think that you have to plan it out and be really consistent in your growing. That's why like succession is really crucial in urban culture, where when you're done your crop, you start a new one because you're not going to have other spaces to grow. So I think that's really crucial, where space, starting small, and learning how to have a plan.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. Now we have a number of questions in the Q&A, so I'm trying to maybe limit my questions, and maybe we can get to the Q&A so that we get everybody's questions answered. And then at the end, if we have time, we can answer the rest of the ones that I had. So first of all, I thank you all for all the questions that you've answered so far. And I'll just start with the Q&A. Thank you for people who are putting their questions in the Q&A. Again, it says Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and you can put your questions in there. So for these questions, anybody can just jump in if you can answer it, or I can go around again. So the first question comes from SI. I'd be interested to hear what the panelists, think of soil blocking as a way to start seeds. Do they recommend purchasing a soil block mold?
I could answer that. Or Charles, were you about to get that one?
I was just going to say, my answer is really quick because I don't know what that is. So I don't use it.
Soil blocker, it's kind of a press with a square shape where you mix a specific combination of your peat and I think compost, and you kind of press them into the square block. So you're not using a plastic pot, and then you put your seed in there. You can just do like one per block, or depending what you're growing. I think the benefit of those is that it's really healthy for the root system, because the roots don't come against that edge of the pot and have to start circling around or getting root bound. That I would say is pro. And also maybe con is that you have to spend that time creating those soil blocks. So depending on the scale of what you're doing, like for me, I always have trouble fitting in everything. I want to start from seed. So I'm like, oh, it's mid-March. I better get some tomatoes in. And I'm like, I barely have time to even find my pots and fill them up with soil and put seeds in. So to have to also create the soil block, like it might not be practical for everyone, but I think it is worth it for root health. Also, you'll find that I sometimes don't give a yes or no answer to things, because I think it's very personalized, and you might like just have the best time with soil blocking and it's going to be all you do from now on and you love it. But someone else might just get frustrated, or like I was saying, with the time constraint. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Kevin, you were going to jump in as well?
I think I mean, I've never used it personally, but I've seen it a lot of users. I think it's a great way to save money, actually, to not buy trays, because I think trays are kind of expensive a little bit. And also with the soil block, you can just buy that one press and just have it for good. But I think that, like what Laura said, it's really good for it not being trapped. When you're using trays, it traps the roots around it so that it doesn't make. But if you're using soil blocking, the roots will gently it'll be organic, like it will be natural, so that you can transplant it even better. Because I feel like the transplanting part in trays, it takes a little bit more time, because it has to get used to the weather, it has to get used to the soil structure and everything, and like the root structure is growing out. But if you use a soil block, it would just like naturally flow into the soil, into the ground, or wherever you're transplanting to. So I think that soil blocking is actually a great way. But for me, I've never used it, so it's not something I can really put my opinion on. But yeah, that's just my
Anybody else? No? Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. I'm interested in starting a free seed library in my neighborhood. Are there any resources you can suggest that can advise me how to best do this? Melody?
I would suggest getting in touch with Seeds of Diversity. It's an organization where they have a seed library. So they're already doing this. in a larger scale. I think they would have a lot of information about just how to save seeds, how to store them properly, and then even also like cataloging or like how to distribute. So I'd suggest getting in touch with them.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Kevin, were you going to go?
Oh, no.
No? Oh, okay. So the next question, for someone who is new to urban farming, what recommendations would you suggest in terms of what to grow that requires the least amount of maintenance and allows for learning about how to be effective?
I think I've touched on this a little bit, where it's growing herbs. Actually, it's the most efficient way and also less maintenance. I've always been growing herbs in my backyard, and I don't touch it for a bit because like it's something that just like grows out of nowhere. And also it's a perennial, so sometimes like during the winter it'll just grow back, so it's just like it's fine. So I think that is just like, if you want to start, I would like herbs is like the way to do it. It's just less maintenance, and it's just it yields a lot too, so it's like you're being more efficient in your yield, just rather not like growing kale, where kale is just like, it's just only getting like 8 bunches out of one crop, one leaf. So I would say, but if you're doing like basil, you're getting like a lot of basil, or shisho or wherever, like rosemary, you're getting a lot of yield from that. So I think that to be more efficient, and if you want to have less amount of maintenance, grow herbs. That's my experience.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Anybody else? Charles, go ahead.
Yep. To answer the first question about seed libraries, join your local Facebook groups, I would say. I live in St. Clair area, and the St. Clair West Gardeners group, always there's people posting about trading seeds and looking for seeds. And I belong to like 3 or 4 little local Facebook groups that do the same thing. So not a permanent seed bank per se, but people in your neighborhood that are interested in the same thing. And I think that all the neighborhoods in the city have their own little groups. Second question, I came into farming last year, as I said, and I wanted to grow everything, and kind of had to rein in what I was going to do. So don't try and grow everything in your first year or your second year. Just pick 1 or 2 things, learn them and do them right. Like Kevin said, herbs are very easy. I would also suggest when you get into farming, you want to also see things that are pretty and actually watch them grow. But I'd also recommend just the opposite. Grow things that grow underground. My potatoes did incredible last year. Carrots, beets, root vegetables that are underground are very easy to maintain because you only have to harvest them once. It's not an ongoing thing. You wait till the end of the season. So patience is also required. So that's my 2 cents on that one.
Thank you very much, Charles. And Melody, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest or maybe warn with the herb growing to be careful with mint and lemon balm and certain herbs that will take over your garden if you're not careful. So maybe certain ones put into pots. So do a bit of research on the herbs as well. Yeah.
Very, very, very good advice, Melody. Yes, that's a great piece of advice when telling people to grow herbs, that mint may be your your downfall. So the next question is from John. It says, thanks, Lara. Any particular types of easy to get / local mulches that you would recommend, aside from compost and fall leaves that we use already?
Oh, because I had looked in the questions and John had asked, it's our community gardeners, including me, get overwhelmed with weeds and weed removal. Any tips about weed prevention early in the season? So I just put mulch. Mulching early in the season around your transplants is good. And so what kinds of mulch, what's easy for you to get? So like straw is great. Straw can be really hard to get in the city, especially in spring. If you can get straw in fall and then store it, that's cool. If you can collect leaves in fall and store them, or get someone else's leaves that they've stored. And then for some areas, I use wood chips. There may be ways of getting free wood chips in your neighborhood, or just maybe that's something that is feasible to buy. There are a lot of things that can be used as mulches, but those would be some of them. And I think even in container gardens, mulching is good. And I just can't resist to comment on, you know, our weeds. And in my book, I started calling them plants that grow themselves. And what Plants for a Future database says is right plant, wrong place. So if there's something like maybe you're getting overwhelmed with lamb's quarters, maybe there's a little lamb's quarter cooking party you can do in the spring where people pull out all those tiny little young lamb's quarters and saute them up or chop them up and freeze them. And so just thinking about like, how can we balance all those beautiful, nutritious and medicinal benefits that those wild plants give us, while maybe making sure that the plants that we are cultivating haven't been completely overwhelmed, or that we haven't been overwhelmed. And then that comes back to mulching.